Question: are you concerned about Jared Walsh? Some fans are, some fans aren't. Well, today on the show, we're going to give you one reason to be concerned and three reasons why you shouldn't be concerned about Jared Walsh. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And as always, thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Every show is free and available on all platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And the best way to help us out is by giving us a rate and a review. It helps others find the show. And those watching on YouTube, make sure that you're one of 3,000 people subscribed to the show and click that bell to be notified every time a new episode drops.
Thanks for being here with us for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. And on that note, we are going Monday, Wednesday, Friday until pitchers and catchers report. So your team almost every day, I guess. But you know what?
Yeah.
We're here for you through the off season, regardless, because we're happy to be here. We are the Frisch Brothers. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Super Halo Bros here in the house with you, and we're excited about today's conversation regarding Jared Walsh, good old Walshy. Every time he hits a home run, I like to call him Walshamania, running wild. And it's important that we have this conversation, Mike, because there's a lot of concern a little bit around Jared Walsh. Is he going to be ready for 2023? Is there going to be any issues coming into next season? So today we're going to give you one reason to be concerned and three reasons why you shouldn't be. But Mike, first, let's recap where we stand with Jared Walsh and his stats and kind of the latest news that we have about him.
John, let's take you back to the 2020 season. Nobody wants to relive that season or that year.
No.
But let me take you back because there was a pleasant surprise, a highlight that year, and that was Jared Walsh. He came out of nowhere, played 32 games, had 108 plate appearances. Johnny, he had 9 home runs and 26 RBIs that season. And I remember when he was hitting the ball really hard, it was one of those moments for Angel fans where we were like, is this guy legit or not? Is he just up against really terrible pitching? Is it because of COVID? There's only 60 games, right? You saw the 290 average, his 324 on base percentage. He had a 646 slugging percentage. Johnny had a 971 OPS that season.
Let's go.
And he was in a season and in a year that was really terrible that we weren't excited about. Walsh was a pleasant surprise in 2020. And I think a lot of people felt like, well, he was just kind of filler for this season. He was somebody that needed to fill in because the Angels needed him to step up. But then 2021 arrived, Johnny, and Walshy became an all-star that year. Tell us his numbers from that season.
Yeah, in 2021, he hit 277, had a 340 on base percentage, 509 slugging, and an 850 OPS, so about 50 points higher than average. 800 is about where you want to see a player sit, like a good player. And here's the thing. They gave Walshy Pujols' job at first base. They wanted him at first base. They tried him out in some right field. And, you know, he could play there, but really Perry Minasian was like, nope, this guy is the first baseman of the future. We're lucky to have him. Finally got away from the two-way thing. He was doing that for a little while. He actually did some of that in 2019 for the Angels. But that 2020 breakout led to a 2021 season where he got the full-time job. So he had 144 games, 585 plate appearances, 29 home runs, one of which was a grand slam off of Aroldis Chapman after a rain delay. And the Angels came all the way back, just like Darren Sutton said. And he had 98 RBIs. Mike, he was also an all-star that season. He had the game-saving catch for the American League in left field where he had never played in the majors. And he had made the team as a fill-in along with like Matt Olson from the A's in terms of first baseman. Then he got used in left field. And so we had high hopes for him, especially considering the fact that he was a 39th round pick. And the drafts don't even go that far anymore. There's no more 39th round. And so Jared Walsh really came out of his shell in 2021 and proved to us that he is an all-star caliber player, really somebody that we needed, especially when you lost Mike Trout and you lost Anthony Rendon. Walsh really stepped up in 2021.
In 2022, last season, he really struggled, and people noticed that he really struggled. And he started the season off not fantastic, but I think that there was this hope that he's going to put it together and he's going to be just fine. But his line was really tough last season. 215, 269, 374, 642. And he only played in 118 games and had 454 plate appearances. And then we learned that Walsh had a thoracic outlet syndrome.
I was gonna say, you want me to read that one?
I do. Okay.
Thoracic outlet syndrome.
Yeah. He had to have surgery to correct it. And surgery was successful. There was a lot of questions as to how long he'd been battling this, because we've seen him struggle. And you and I talked on this show about, hey, maybe that's why he's struggling, because we did a quick deep dive, good old Wikipedia and Google, right? And discovered that this injury can affect a lot of what a baseball player has to do on the field and at the plate. Walshy said, and you mentioned this, Walshy said that the injury occurred a few years ago, but worsened last season. And he thinks that he really started to injure himself when he was experimenting as a pitcher in 2019. And he said it caused a lot of tightness in his neck and his left shoulder. And something that we've talked about and that we discovered through all of the reports on his surgery, he had to have a rib removed. Like, I mean, the guy went through a major surgery, but here's the good news. He's expected to be back and ready to go for spring training. That's what Perry Manassian has said. That's what Jay Walsh has said. And so I'm excited about that. And I think that it's been a topic of discussion for Angel fans this offseason, because we weren't sure where he is. And is he going to be healthy, or is he going to struggle? Like, that was the tension, which is why names like Jose Abreu came up for the Angels. You brought up that name. And then there was a few other options like, hey, could we maybe make a trade for a first baseman? But Johnny, how great would it be to have a healthy, productive Jared Walsh in this lineup in 2023?
Yeah, if he can get back to who he was in 21, I think that it only adds to the potential of this team. And you've got pop all over the roster with Trout, who can hit, 40 plus home runs, Shohei, who could hit 40 home runs, Taylor Ward might be a 25 home run guy, Hunter Renfroe almost hit 30, Jared Walsh almost hit 30 in 21, so give him a full season to do his thing. I think, Mike, that by all accounts, I'm excited to hear that he's going to be better. Look, I'm wearing the, if you're listening on the audio side, you can see on the video side, I'm wearing the City Connect hat, because Jared Walsh hit for the cycle on the first day of the City Connect. So there was a point where he was still being very productive, but the injury just came calling for him, and it was time to call it and say, all right, I got to deal with this. I got to take care of this. And so to have him back in this lineup, especially with the depth that the Angels have added, you can do the platoon thing so that Jared Walsh is not always facing lefties, which he has struggled against. Actually, to start 22, he had reverse splits, which was kind of funny. But historically, he's struggled against left-handed pitching. And then you have guys like Drury and Urshela who could fill in for him at first base or swap in and out. You can move Walsh to the outfield. So really just having him as a diversifiable player, somebody who can play all over the infield. I don't think that's a real word.
That was a $10 word if it was a real word.
Well, I bought it with a lotto ticket. But anyway, the fact that he is versatile, there you go. That's the word I was looking for. Versatile. He can play all over the field. He can play the outfield, the infield, and to have his bat back in this lineup. And you and I kind of did a lineup a few episodes ago. I think somebody asked it for a mailbag question, like, what's your lineup look like?
Yeah.
And I think both of us kind of put Jared Walsh 7th, 6th, where traditionally he's probably 5th or 6th. So you really expand this lineup because of the depth that the Angels have now. And so to have his power bat maybe a little bit lower in the lineup kind of ups that OPS that the Angels struggled with so badly in the 6 through 9 parts of the lineup. So it really makes a huge change for Jared Walsh to be back in 2023. What say you?
I look forward to having him back, because I've mentioned this multiple times and Angel fans have agreed with me. He's our Wally Joyner. He's our JT Snow. He's got this excitement about him. And if you look at his splits from last year, Johnny actually didn't have too rough of a first half. It
Hmm.
was when that injury was really hurting him, when he
Yeah.
really slowed down. And it was when that losing streak took place. And then I think it was July when everything kind of fell apart. He fell apart. And we were wondering what's up with him. And then when we found out that he had this issue in his back and in his rib, it made sense. And so
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to having him back, not just offensively. I think what we saw early on in the season last year, and I know we're hanging on to this wishbone, but I'm going to keep hanging on to it. What we saw offensively last year in the first half of the season, 44 games, is the team that I think that we're going to see this next season. And Walshy played a big part in that. But let's not forget his defense. He is so great at first base. And having Mike Ford over there helped us to understand how great Jared Walsh is at first base with his scoop and his ballet moves and his yoga stretches over there. I mean, the guy is fantastic, and he is going to really benefit this defense. And it's another reason why I think Manassian went and got a guy like Brandon Drury and Gio Urshela, and maybe not a strong defensive shortstop or third baseman or second baseman, because when you have a Jared Walsh at first, he makes your infield that much better. And so I'm thrilled to have him back. I'm believing the hype. I'm believing the reports that he is okay. And I'm glad that we didn't go and get somebody to play first base, because I think that Walshy is going to be the first baseman this year and the first baseman of the future.
Hey, so we did a little recap of Jared Walsh, and coming up on Locked On Angels, we're going to share with you the numbers that indicate Jared Walsh will be the Walsh of old in 2023, and we'll give you one reason why you should be concerned and 3 reasons why you should not be concerned.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to the college bowl season, which is incredible, by the way. Do they play defense in college football anymore? I'm not sure. You can also get stats on the basketball season. They've got you covered at betonline.net. And if you want to do a deep dive, they've got sports podcasts all about betting, and you can find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. You can head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen today. And for your second listen, you got to check out Locked On MLB Prospects with host Lindsey Crosby, our good friend and buddy. He's a tremendous host and a prospect encyclopedia. And if you want to go deeper into your knowledge of minor leaguers for your team or any of the other teams, maybe you're thinking about some trade candidates and you want to know who's out there, Lindsey has it all on Locked On MLB Prospects. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, when we talk about Jared Walsh, there's a lot of good that we can talk about, but we need to also focus on some of the concerns. And so we're going to give you one reason to be concerned in this segment. And there are 2 stats that really catch your attention when you look at Jared Walsh, when you do a deep dive. You can always go to Fangraphs. They have some great stuff there, and some other websites like Baseball Reference has some good stats there. Here's what we noticed about Jared Walsh last year, and Angel fans noticed. His production last year, it really dropped off. And we think perhaps it was heavily influenced by the injury. But the 2 stats that we're going to share are the reason why you should be concerned. The first stat that's really concerning is his strikeout rate, Johnny. In 2022, it spiked to 30.4%. Now, the average player is around 20%, which is where Walshy was the last 2 seasons. In 2020, he was 13.9, and then a full season in 2021, he was 26%. And so again, he was around the league average in those seasons, but last year it jumped to 30%. And again, it probably has to do with that injury. We'll talk about that in a minute, but that's a stat that is very concerning. He's striking out a whole lot, and in a lineup where you have guys that are going to get on base like Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani and Anthony Rendon, you need to make contact. Contact is king in this lineup, because that's moving runners over, that's hitting a sacrifice fly, and this strikeout rate is a reason to be concerned. But alone, it's not a reason to be concerned. I think the stat that you're about to share, John, when you put those two together, that's what makes us concerned about what Jared Walsh will be next season.
Yeah, it's a deadly combination of Fire Marshal Bill, right? A deadly combination.
Let me show you something.
Second is the fact that his walk rate dipped to 5.9% in 2022, and here's the thing: it was 8.2% in 2021. So he had 48 total walks in 585 plate appearances. In 2022, he had 27 walks in 454 plate appearances.
Yeah.
So you can see how the rate at which he was walking was sort of declining last season. And together, I think those two stats really kind of give you a little bit of cause for concern if you were to take those together. But these are actually really a reflection of two other stats. The rate of his homers per fly ball and general power production. Each of those stats fell off dramatically. And so I think the big question here, Mike, is was this a case of Jared Walsh being affected by his injury, or is the league catching up to him and figuring him out at the plate? What do you think?
I think that this is a reflection of his injury, because in 2020 and 2021, he was really consistent. And quite honestly, those numbers are going to catch your eye, but they're not a dramatic change from where he was the last two seasons, which is why I think it's the injury. And he started the year off with his numbers actually matching up to what he's done in the last couple of years. And then when he fell off the cliff, that's when everything essentially fell off the cliff for him. And it was around the time that they began to talk about this injury. And so I understand why people are like, man, is this guy going to hit for us? And is he going to be someone we can count on? And why we've considered other first basemen. I'm of the opinion that it was the injury that really affected the way that he was swinging the bat. And maybe perhaps he's swinging at pitches he normally wouldn't swing at. And then if you're not getting full movement in your back because you've got this issue, like that is going to affect how you're going to swing the bat too. Because if you've been a baseball fan for a long time, you know that the path to the ball from the bat it has to be consistent. It has to be clean. Look at like Mike Trout, for example, or if you follow Driveline on Twitter, they actually have they show a really great like way to swing. In fact, Joe Adell was just on there yesterday and his path to the ball looks completely different, which that's a whole nother conversation, but that's exciting. Yes. The bat to the ball needs to be consistent every single time. And because of this injury, it really caused Walshy to have to adjust, and he's cringing when he's swinging, and you can tell that he's hurting. And so that's why I think it's the injury. What do you think, John?
I think it's a little bit of both. Honestly, I think that the league has learned that Jared Walsh is a power threat and that they need to be a little bit more careful about how they pitch to him. They're going to give him that slider away if he's a lefty or if he's facing a lefty, and he's going to chase it. In that way, it reminded me a lot of the days of Josh Hamilton batting left for us and going after those sliders away. They got him. It felt like every single time Josh Hamilton got a slider away, he would chase it.
Swing.
And I honestly think that this injury caused Jared Walsh to press a little bit more because you're trying to figure out what's wrong with you. You're fighting through the pain. You're trying to swing and produce the way that you were before. And you're seeing your numbers and you're seeing your results, and they're not what they were last year. And so you're going to try a little bit harder, but your body's fighting against you. I think all of that caught up with Jared Walsh by the time he went on the injured list. And it's great that he had the surgery. And that speaks to two things. It speaks to him pressing through this injury, and Mike Trout, who also pressed through his back injury. We say all the time, man, these guys are taking days off and they're injured and yada, yada, yada. But the thing is when they do press through an injury, you see Mike Trout struggle like he did during the losing streak. You see Jared Walsh struggle like he did during that losing streak. These guys are pressing and they're trying to get through their injuries. And while it's gutsy and we admire them for that, there comes a point where you have to realize, man, I think I got to take care of this issue. I got to take care of this injury. So to me, Mike, I think it's both. I think it's two things. I think it's that the league understands who Jared Walsh is now, as opposed to 21 when he was still kind of new on the scene. I mean, the league only played within the, for example, the Angels played the AL West and the NL West in 2020. So not a lot of people from other teams saw the Angels in 2020. And so then we go into 21 with knowing what we know as Angel fans about Jared Walsh, but other teams might not have known that. And he really had a breakout year in 21. So I think that the league has started to figure him out a little bit more, but I also think he was really pressing through that injury.
All right, we're talking about Jared Walsh, and we've given you his stats, and we've looked at his last 3 years. We gave you a reason to be concerned, but there are some reasons to not be concerned. And so there's 3 stats that we want to share with you that help you to, and help us to be confident that Walshy will be back this season. The first stat is exit velocity. It hasn't really changed. I mean, this guy is really hitting the ball hard. In fact, he hit the ball the hardest in his career last season. So here's his numbers. 2020, he was 88 miles per hour exit velocity, 89.6 in 2021. And then in 2022, he was hitting the ball at a 90 mile an hour exit velocity. Dang. So he was hitting it. When he was hitting it hard, he was hitting it, and making contact, he was hitting it hard. So I think that that's a good stat to look at. And in fact, if you do a deeper dive, you'll find that in the first half of the year, that's where a lot of those numbers came from, because Walshy was feeling good. And then when the injury started to take its effect, that's when things started to change for him. But that's the first stat that helps us to not be as concerned about Jared Walsh.
Hey, the second stat is the Donkey Kong stat, the barreling percentage, making strong contact. In 2020, he had a 12.6% barrel percentage. In 21, he had 11.3%. And in 22, it's 9.5%. So you could see it trickle down a little bit, but it's still sitting around that 10% mark, which is still really good. And he's making strong contact when he does make contact with the ball. And I think the decline in 22, about 2 points down from the year before, probably has a lot to do with the injury that he was dealing with. How about the third stat, Mike?
The third stat is the hard hit contact rate. The league average is 35%. Walshy's always been over it. And in fact, last season, he was way over it, 7.5 points over it. So 2020 was 39%, 2021, 41%, and then 2022, 42.5%. So these stats, I mean, they show us that Walsh really hasn't lost the ability to make good contact.
Right. When he's making contact.
Yeah, right. Like he's making contact. He's been consistent over the last few years. I get excited when I see these stats, because I think that we're going to see our boy come back. Of the stats that we've shared, Johnny, when we look at the K rate and walk rate, and then these hard hit rates, which one do you think is the most important that we should be paying attention to, that could really give us an indication as to who Jared will be this coming season?
Well, I'm going to make you cringe right here, but I've done this before. It's not say less fam, it's K less fam. And I want to see Jared Walsh K less, like pay less shoe source, except K less walk source. There you go. But here's the thing. He's got to strike out less. I think that's really important, because I'm not concerned about the walk rate. Yes, it is good to know when to take a walk. Mike, you and I have talked about how, this is funny to say, how frustrating it could be when Mike Trout takes a walk, when it's like, bro, we need you to hit. Like, we need you to swing. And don't get me wrong, Trout's got a great eye at the plate, and that's why he takes walks, and pitchers are afraid to toss to him. But we really just want to see Trout get a hit and drive in some runs. And sometimes he comes through with that. And other times he takes the walk, and then you've got, whoever's behind him coming up, usually Shohei, which is great because you want to get on base for Shohei.
Right.
I say all that because with Jared Walsh's contact rate and the hard hitting contact rate and the barrel percentage, you want to see Jared Walsh make contact. Yes, it's great for him to identify what pitches to swing at and what not to swing at. And therefore, I think if he's striking out less, it's because he's not swinging out of the zone, which also means that the walk rate is going to go up because he's not swinging out of the zone. I think his chase rate is the one that needs to come down in my eyes. That K rate needs to come down. By virtue of that, the walk rates will come up, because that's the thing about Jared Walsh. He's always trying to make contact. He makes good hard hitting contact when he does, and we need him to make contact, especially if he's going to slot in maybe 6th or 7th in this rotation. What of these stats do these stats help ease your concerns about Jared Walsh? And is he going to be the Jared that we have come to know over the last 3 years in 2023? Are we going to go to Jared this season, Mike?
I was just going to say that's what I want. I want the Jared that said, he went to Jared. I want that. I want those calls. This guy is clutch, man. And I know we've talked about how clutch Trout and Ohtani and Rendon are, But you need a guy like Jared Walsh on your team that isn't going to make a lot of noise in the media, but he's going to make a lot of noise on the field.
He's going to give you a grand slam against lefty Aroldis Chapman.
Yes, I want that guy. And he's just a likable guy. We did a show earlier last season where we talked about why some players fans hate when they're struggling and why some players fans give a lot of grace to.
You get a pass, yeah.
And Walshy is that type of player that when he's struggling, you just like him. And it's because he has went to Jared moments. It's because he's out there hustling and he's playing hard and he's fighting through it. And so I just hope that we get a lot of went to Jared moments in 2023 because we need this guy to come through for us on the Angels. I think that he is key to us being successful in making the playoffs.
Let's not forget that he went to Jared moment was a walk-off home run against the White Sox to open up 2021, and maybe we'll see more of that in 2023.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen every day. Now, for your second listen, check out the Locked On MLB Prospects show with our friend Lindsey Crosby. He's a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. And his show is free and available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, get at us on Twitter at Locked On Angels and Twitter and Instagram at Super Halo Bros. We'd love to connect with you there. A shout out to Halo Hangout for sharing a question that came up during the mailbag about Joe Adell. They wrote a whole article about it. You can find that on their Twitter, Halo Hangout, or we reshared it at Locked On Angels. Hey, Mike, what do we have on deck for Friday's show?
Well, I have a personal goal to do a segment where Halo Hangout mentions my name. Not just your name. Hey, on Friday's show, we're going to talk about why we're okay with an in-house option for the sixth starter. That's Friday on Locked On Angels.
That's going to be fun to say over and over again. Sixth starter.
Sixth
starter. How about starter number 6? That's what I'm going to go with on Friday. All right, y'all. We hope you'll join us again. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Angels, and we'll see you on Friday.